All right, let's dive into something that's making a lot of people, well, a little uncomfortable. We're talking about why a growing number of successful older men are making a very conscious choice to be single, for good.
I'd rather die alone than date again. I mean, wow. You hear a statement like that, and you might think it's just some shocking outlier comment. But it's not. This is a sentiment you're hearing more and more from men in their 60s. Guys who've lived full lives, been in long term relationships, and are now just saying, no more. Now, it is so important to get this straight from the get go. This isn't coming from a place of bitterness. This isn't some emotional reaction after a bad breakup. No, this is a cold, hard, logical calculation, a cost benefit analysis of what relationships in the modern world actually demand.
So, who are these guys we're talking about? Look, they're not lonely guys who can't find a partner. It's actually the opposite. They're often successful, they're stable, and yeah, they've given modern dating a try. They are walking away not because they failed, but because they've made a deliberate choice. And that brings us to the absolute core of their thinking, the calculation. It's simple, really. They're weighing what they'd have to give up, their peace, their autonomy, their freedom, against what they'd get in return, which is mainly companionship. And for these men, the scales just don't balance. The math, as they see it, just doesn't add up anymore.
To really get why this calculation makes sense to them, we have to look back. These guys are drawing on decades of experience, you know? They've been in long-term partnerships, and now they're looking back and reevaluating what those relationships actually cost them, day in and day out.
And this table here, it just nails the contrast between the promise and the price. When they were young, the promise was all about companionship, teamwork, building a future together. But looking back, the price they paid was a loss of autonomy, a ton of emotional labor, and just this feeling of constant compromise on their hobbies, their dreams, all to just, keep the peace.
Which leads to this feeling that so many of these men talk about after a long-term relationship ends, whether it's through divorce or, a partner passing away. It's not sadness they feel first. It's this completely unexpected and profound sense of relief. Almost like a physical weight they didn't even know they were carrying for decades was just gone, and they can finally breathe again.
So after feeling that incredible relief, some of them think, okay, maybe I'll try dating again. But then they look at the modern dating landscape and it presents this whole new set of costs. It feels like a total minefield, and the whole idea just seems exhausting. The very first thing they run into, especially with dating apps, is that it doesn't feel like you're trying to build a real connection with someone. It feels totally performative. Exactly. It's like you're on a constant audition. You're up against hundreds of other profiles, trying to be clever enough, interesting enough to even get a first date. And if you do, the evaluation just keeps going. It's this endless, draining cycle of having to prove your worth, and frankly, they just find it undignified. And this really illustrates the imbalance they perceive. Potential partners often come with this long list of requirements. You gotta have financial stability. You need to be an emotional rock, be available for all the drama. And in return, what's offered is, well, her presence. To these men, that exchange feels completely lopsided. There's also a biological angle to this whole thing. The idea is that as men get older, their testosterone naturally declines. But this isn't seen as a curse. No, it's framed as a gift. It removes that hormonal urge that might have clouded their judgment when they were younger. It lets them evaluate a potential partner with total, clear-headed logic. But hey, this decision isn't just about running away from all the negatives. It's about running towards something. It's about actively embracing the huge positives of being alone. They found something they now realize is incredibly valuable: peace. And the cornerstone of that peace? It's autonomy. Simple as that. It's the right to live your life on your own terms, to make your own decisions based on what you want, not what someone else needs or expects from you. For them, it's a freedom they feel like they've finally earned back. They contrast this new freedom with how they felt in their past relationships. And this quote, wow, it just captures it perfectly. That feeling of constantly walking on eggshells, always having to measure your words, manage moods, just to avoid a fight. Living without that constant tension is a huge part of the peace they value so much now. And the benefits are real, they're tangible. Without all that stress, they report better health. They have more time for old hobbies and real friendships. They have total control over their money, their time, their space. It's a kind of peace that isn't just a fleeting moment, it's deep and it's sustainable.
Of course, making a choice like this really goes against what society tells us is normal. Family, friends, they often just don't get it. They see a man who's alone and they immediately think it's a failure, that he must be lonely, instead of seeing it for what it is, a conscious, deliberate choice for a better life. And here's a fascinating take on why people push back so hard. A man who is genuinely happy and at peace by himself can, without saying a word, feel like a threat to people in conventional relationships. His contentment basically holds up a mirror to the compromises they've made, and, well, that can make people very uncomfortable. So what this really boils down to is a massive shift in personal values. The things they were raised to prioritize, companionship, partnership, affection, have been completely rearranged. Now, there's a new hierarchy, and at the very top are peace, freedom, and autonomy. That's their new definition of a successful life. And finally, this is maybe the most important takeaway. The whole decision gets reframed. It's not an act of bitterness. It's not about rejecting women. It's an act of profound self-respect. It's about finally recognizing your own limits and valuing your own well-being above everything else. So that leaves us with this big question to chew on. In a world that tells us partnership equals success, is a man choosing to protect his own peace at all costs a sign of failure? Or is it a kind of wisdom that you can only gain after decades of life experience? That's a powerful thought to end on.